I mentioned in the very first video that as we did an overview of the model and as we thought through the different windows, and one of the things that I'd mentioned in there was that as we look through the foggy window, sometimes it's hard to see through, and that we need to come with a level of humility. We need to come spirit dependent, but we also need to come in the context of community. Some of that community is with friends and people who are alive with us, and but others are people that we may not even know or have never met, and we find their help in different resources like commentaries. And so when we think about commentaries, there's some rules that I would want to suggest for how to use commentaries. And so we want to use them as a reference, not as a substitute for your own personal engagement in the text. And so I have been disappointed before, almost let down, where I went too soon to a commentary and got the answer, so to speak, and felt like, oh man, I could have found that. I could have seen that in the passage. And so I missed out on the joy of discovery by kind of short-circuiting the process and running to a commentary too soon. So you want to use it as a reference, not as a substitute. So you want to do your own work because God speaks to you through the passage in your own personal time with Him. And you don't have to depend upon necessarily somebody else in the work that they did and how God spoke to them through the passage. Though at the same time, we do want to check our work with what scholars have come up with before us. And that's point number 2. Use them to check your work. So you've done a lot of work up to this point in context and now in the text. And so you want to think through, what am I maybe missing? What didn't I see? What could I be getting wrong? And you could also be going in there to see about, if there were Greek or Hebrew words that would have given insight. I already mentioned about Ishmael, meaning God hears. And so you wouldn't have known that maybe unless you used some kind of outside help to be able to get that. So, but you use commentaries to check your work and to maybe lend a little bit of help where you needed some help. And third, use them to gain perspectives that you might not have. Okay, so you may be coming from with certain lenses on from a certain cultural perspective, and you may be able to go to a commentary that may be from an entirely different cultural perspective. I'm going to introduce some of the commentaries in a little bit that would maybe be from a different cultural perspective than you're used to, and they could be coming from a vantage point to see through that window that you're not coming from, and so they could help you. Number 4, use them throughout your study for context, help with Greek or Hebrew words, but don't rely on them solely. And so again, I mentioned this kind of earlier, is that when you're looking at context and you're thinking about maybe literary context. Again, I mentioned earlier that I use a biblical theological study Bible, and I use the helps there of the different ways that they've broken up the context, what comes before and what unit it's in and all that stuff. I use that regularly in my study of a passage all the way throughout, just to be able to give me a frame of reference and some bearings. You also may need to go to some kind of Bible dictionary to maybe get some help with some of the historical or cultural context as well. And so you can do that a little bit earlier in your study, but again, don't just go to the commentaries and say, done, I've fulfilled my, I've studied the passage and I'm good to go. No, you're going to short circuit the process by doing that. Maybe what God could be saying to you, and miss out on the joy of being able for self-discovery. And then 5, recognize that the goal of your study is to know or to encounter God and to be changed into His likeness, not just to master the text. And this is key too, is that when you've studied a text with or without commentaries, the goal is not just to know what the text says and then leave as a man who has looked intently into the mirror and then goes away forgetting what he looks like. And so you are meant, what's meant in your study to happen is for you to encounter God and for you to know Him. and for you in seeing him to be changed by him and to be transformed into his likeness. That's the goal. And so sometimes when we read a commentary, we can default to just simply reading for information. We can read our Bibles the same way as well, in that we can just read for information and not for transformation. So we want to read not just for information, we want to read for transformation. We even in using commentaries, we want to realize that these commentaries should be helping us to ultimately not just know the text, but to know God and to be changed by him. And so here's some examples of different commentaries that I just kind of pulled for you guys to look at. Is again, depending upon your culture, this may be your culture, it may not be. And so it may be that you're getting help from somebody in your own culture. It may be that you're getting help from somebody from a different culture. And so one is the South Asia Bible Commentary, and this is a 1 volume work that you can go to, and you can get South Asian perspective on some of these texts. It's a solid commentary. The other is the Asia Bible Commentary series, which is a series of books. So it goes in a bit more detail than the other commentary that I just mentioned, and again comes from an Asian perspective and lens. And then the other one that I'll mention here is a free one in the TGC, the Gospel Coalition website, where they now have a growing resource bank here of commentaries that you can just go to and type in the search commentaries, and many books now of the Bible they have for commentaries. And again, most of these authors are coming from a U.S. perspective, and so, but it's a free resource for you to be able to dive in and get a little bit more familiar with the text. It's not going to be an exhaustive resource, but it could be helpful to get you down the road. And a couple more are the Africa Bible Commentary, and again, this is a 1 volume work, and then this I don't know how to say it, Commentario Biblico Contemporaneo. Sorry about that, I just butchered my Spanish, but it is a commentary, 1 volume commentary from Latin America. And so those are just some resources, and there's plenty more out there as well that you can use as you consult commentaries and check your work.